Let's look at the International Monetary Fund, which has urged the Treasurer Jim Chalmers to restrict tax breaks for the family home and perhaps broaden the GST, all part of a broader tax review. This was included in the IMF's annual review to Australia and has warned that housing tax could limit the country's economic growth. So joining me live now is the Assistant Trade and Manufacturing Minister, Tim Ayres. Tim, great to see you.
G'day, Laura.
It's been a while.
It has. Good to be back on the show.
The IMF's recommendations here?
Well, I think that if you take a step back, the IMF report is a pretty strong endorsement of the government's approach. You know, there is a global inflation risk accentuated in some of our trading partners where there are very difficult inflation challenges being faced. We're facing our own inflation challenges here. What the IMF report says is that the government's fundamentally got it right. You know, a tight approach on fiscal policy, which is putting downward pressure on inflation and interest rates. The productivity measures that the government announced and has been implementing in terms of childcare, parental leave, all of these kind of measures are strongly endorsed in the IMF report. Now, I know that they've, in addition, got a series of comments to make about tax reform, and you'd expect the IMF, you know, it's an institution full of economists who've got views about tax reform.
Yeah.
I can just tell you that the government's priority in terms of tax reform this term has been what the Treasurer and the Prime Minister have announced and spent some time on. That is, like, let's get this multinational tax reform set of issues right. Let's deliver them carefully in the interest of all Australians. That'll have a structural effect in the budget over decades to come.
But doesn't it also tell you, as you say, the IMF is full of economists, and respected economists here in Australia have also talked about broadening the GST, needing to relook at that for years. Doesn't that tell you that politics sometimes gets in the way of good policy, and your government is no different?
Well, there's a diversity of views across the community and across the experts
too. And the argument's usually political as to why not.
Across the experts, but we've made our position in relation to these issues really clear. And I think that's what Australians expect out of government, is that, you know, government, that we made our position in opposition really clear. Our position in government has been consistent with that.
Did Jim Chalmers, though, muddy the waters with his essay this week?
Oh, I think it was an excellent essay.
What did you like about it?
It set out, well, I think it was a thoughtful approach to some of the challenges that we face post-COVID. What I really liked about Jim's essay is that he makes the point that no set of historical circumstances are the same. So the policy prescription that fitted the 1950s and 1960s or the 1980s and 1990s is not the same policy prescription that fits today. And he's got some helpful suggestions about the kind of values that might drive our approach to modern capitalism and making sure that the economy works for society, not the other way around. And I think it's a helpful, thoughtful, substantial injection of that. It's set off a wild debate amongst some sections of the community. I saw some of the newspaper editorials that were pretty fevered the following day, but
don't you agree?
But that's a good thing.
They were brutal editorials.
That's a good thing. Treasurers
from the AFR and the Australian.
Treasurers should lead debates, and that's going to involve some argument.
What did you think of those editorials, though? Were they fair?
Well, I think it's all part of the rich tapestry of political debate in Australia. People have got different views.
That struck me in reading those, that Labor is responsible, previous Labor governments, is responsible for two of the most expensive and ballooning programs, the Gonski Review and the NDIS. Now, I'm not saying they're not required, but the spending in both of those is out of control, and the results from them both are questionable.
Well, I think if you talk to the families of NDIS recipients, they wouldn't quibble with whether or not the scheme is a good thing.
Yeah.
Minister Shorten and the government have made it clear they're working through some. Let's focus on the NDIS, right?
So you admit that there are issues with
working through those issues and making sure that it's a scheme that delivers in terms of equity, that it's a scheme that delivers for the Australians whose interests we're trying to protect and look after.
No one's questioning that. It's about the wasteful spending.
Well, I'm going to wait to see what the result of those careful reviews are. I mean, this is it's open to commentators, of course, to make all of these comments. It's for government not to politicise these, but to work through them carefully. we have to make sure that the NDIS does its job for generations to come.
Okay, what is this upcoming budget going to look like? Jim Chalmers has flagged that he wants to do more to help the disadvantaged. That seems fair enough and unsurprising from a Labor government. On the flip side, you've also got more favourable conditions with China. Is this budget going to bank on that?
It'd be pretty brave, wouldn't it, for the Assistant Minister for Trade and Manufacturing to speculate about the shape of the 2023 budget. I'm very grateful.
If you want to make headlines,
I'm very grateful for the invitation to comment, but reluctantly concede that I can't and shouldn't.